capes and conundrums. "All right, watch and learn, kiddo," Deadshot says as he brings his gun into position. Most people think that a rifle is a point-and-click answer to their problems. Point, pull the trigger, and problem solved. Those people are idiots. "Oh," the merc beside him says. Since Deadshot was categorically a solo act and maybe on occasion has some mooks to do the heavy lifting, having someone hang around close would be an issue. So the excuse was he was training another sniper. Franchising, as it were. "Okay, really quick out of character," Silicon says. "Yeah?" Pavel asks. "How the hell are you going to cause half of that construction to come apart with a bullet? I understand it's not massively up to code, but at the same time, a bullet is small. It has only so much kinetic energy it can carry, and if you bring Axiom into this, you're setting up a flare." "Architecture and physics," Pavel says as he adjusts the gun and then leans away from it. "Look down the scope. It should start to make sense. That's one of the main cables of that sign, but there's at least one more, and it only needs one to stay upright. Look at the angle. Also remember, I've got a reinforced bullet for this one. It's designed to stay intact and ricochet," Pavel says, and Silicon rises up to look at the back of the sign again and mentally trace where the bullet will go. "You're going to shatter one support and weaken the other." Yes. That is an absurd level of accuracy. When the Undaunted claim to be better than the best of the best, it's not idle boasting, Pavel states as he takes a full shooting position again. "So what's the event in question?" "We're going to move along 5 positions, and they have to find our safe house in the point between them all. For that, we're going to need to leave some clues at each one. This first position, to let people know they need to look, is going to have the bullet casing, the bipod, and of course the imprints we're leaving on the roof gravel. For the next one, we're putting a type of polish on our boots that will get easily rubbed off, so they get that, the casing, and the imprint. Are we leaving 3 clues at each place?" "Yes, some more obvious than others. Which reminds me," Pavel says before digging out and tossing a wrapped bar at Silicon. "Eat that! It's the 3rd clue for the 3rd location. Each one gets a bullet casing and the imprint of us hanging around." "What's the 4th clue then?" "A novelty sticker from a nearby business. It'll let all the girls on the case know that Deadshot is staying nearby and has at least a hotel room, if not a full-on base of operations." "And the last one?" "Hardest one of all. Only 2 clues, the imprint and the casing. And the ultimate place is in the middle of all of it? Not exactly middle, but a place where you can reach all 5 locations without being spotted on a camera. Which is why we're going there and then back out to relocate each time. So I hope you're ready to take the stairs, because we got cardio in our future." "Oh, joy," Silicon says before a small timer goes off, and Pavel grins. "Showtime," he says as he double-checks the wind, tastes the air, and then slowly squeezes the trigger on his rifle. The rifle is silenced, and therefore the first sound that the danger makes is the calamitous clang as the grip of the frist cable is shattered, and the still very active bullet goes careening downwards and slams into the base that holds the second cable, cracking it ever so slightly. Even from their position on the building, both men can hear the screaming groan as the metal slowly gives, before the sign suddenly collapses forward and slams into the civilians that Deadshot was hired to kill. "Time to go," Pavel says, rising up as he disengages the bipod mount. "Really? We're just going down the stairs?" Silicon asks. The elevators have cameras, and the stairwells only have cameras above the doors. However, the 5 buildings we're using are in the middle of a maintenance upgrade that was massively overbooked, as about 15 different buildings decided they wanted the upgrades all at the same time. So these 5 are at the end of the list. Pavel explains as he walks down. "But the older security networks," Silicon says. "Pardon, I should have been more clear. The removal of the old equipment is already done for these 5 buildings. The actual replacement parts are not currently available. And since the stairs are rarely used, the security cameras in here are the last of the last priority," Silicon says, and Pavel nods. "That's right. Now we need to be able to get to our next location in a hurry. So time to skip some stairs, Pavel says, as he jumps down one flight and then flings himself down the next. Silicon teleports down to the bottom, but only has a few moments before Pavel arrives. He then waves for Silicon to follow him, and then leads him through the building in a very strange, roundabout manner. We're avoiding all the cameras they have left, aren't we? Silicon asks, and Pavel nods as he casually exits the building. He also points up, and Silicon sees many sonar in the air, a lot of them in Batman outfits of some kind, and clearly scanning the upper areas and completely missing the two men, casually walking around, dressed like Deadshot, with one of them lugging around a gun roughly as big as he is. Hey, you're one of the actors, right? Playing a bad guy? A young Sonar girl asks, flapping up to them. She's tiny, dressed in all pink, and clearly has gotten into at least a small amount of glitter lately. That's right. Is there something you want? Pavel asks in amusement. Can I take a picture? She asks, holding up her communicator. Sure thing, little lady. Pavel answers, and she all but throws herself at him and turns in midair. Say, boogers, she exclaims. Boogers, Pavel demands, before he hears the little camera go off a few times, and she slides down with a giggle to examine her new selfie with the supervillain. Thank you, Mr. Bad Guy. Have fun, she says, rushing off with a laugh. Well, that was adorable. Let's keep moving. Pavel states before they cross the street and make it into a mall. A mall where he immediately leads Silicon into a side passage that's lacking any kind of signs whatsoever. Where are we? The building layout had some design fails. There are unregistered rooms back here. Well, not so much rooms as unused space, gaps between the stores. No security, no cameras, not even on the registration. So is this trespassing? Even if we hadn't informed the owners and legally rented the space? No. The place isn't technically on the building plans, so even if we squatted here, it wouldn't be a crime. But since we're renting it, as is, we're not only allowed in here, but are the only ones allowed. Pavel explains as he opens a semi-hidden doorway to reveal a sniper's lair. Silicon notes. That's right. This is an almost unfair test. They have to figure out that you weren't spotted because you avoided the cameras, then look at a building's blueprints and find out that there's one place with none whatsoever. That's right. This is what Level 4 Puzzle Challenge is about. If they catch us, it's a win. But catching us is the hard part. Pavel says, and Silicon considers. I mean, this seems a little, I don't know, unfair? It's a riddle. Not every problem is solved by shooting things or using brute force. Pavel replies as he fetches his replacement bipod. All right, time to go. After I fire my shot, the girls will all be given a warning about the second crime scene. They can then trace the bullet trajectory to our new location. I still say it's asking a bit much of people. It's far more data than Batman in the comic gets. I don't think comparing people to a person whose superpower seems to be hyper-intelligence and a hefty dose of denial is fair either. Silicon notes before Pavel leads him out. Probably not. He admits, and they're shortly out of the mall and climbing up the stairs of another high-rise. She rushes to the scene of the next crime. It's just like the last one. Massive collateral damage, one shot, a single attack, a single action, and dozens of lives are done. It's meticulous. It's brilliant. It can only be Deadshot with that kind of aim and... Hey, we got one too deep here! Someone calls out and she's pulled out of her head. What? What? She asks and looks around. The mannequin's in a state of placement. The explosion caused by the perfect unleashing of a gas valve that was sheared by a bullet. It blew out the front of a restaurant and left it a mess with all the mannequins in pieces. You were brooding, girl. I could tell. You were forgetting to pull yourself out, the other Sonar says, and she holds her head. I wasn't I? Damn, that's not good. You all right there, Batman? The Undaunted, playing the part of Jim Gordon, asks. "Fine, I'm fine," she says, examining the area again. She lets out tiny pulses of sound and hears the place. The tiny hole where the bullet went through. The scalpel, precise shearing of the pipe. No actual restaurants here used gas stoves, so it had to be part of the entire event. But still. She lets out a little click and then imagines a straight line going backwards, directly from the hole. She turns and sees the top of a large building nearby lines up nearly perfectly with it. "Up there!" That said, she takes off and gains altitude fast, climbing upwards on the ash-flecked wind until she crests over top. Empty already. She lets out a supersonic pulse, and there's a shape far different from the rest among the gravel atop the roof. A little cylinder. One that still stinks ever so slightly as she leans in close. She steps around the slight indents, suggesting where Deadshot laid, and sees a slight smudging of some substance on the gravel as well. She doesn't know what it is, but this? What is the puzzle? She asks herself out loud. There has to be some kind of answer to this. "There's something up with you, isn't there?" Another Sonier asks as she alights on the landing. She looks back to where more are joining. "If you want it to stay private, keep it in your head. We all have good hearing, sister." She begins, before swallowing it. "If you're not up for these challenges, then you're not up for them, and that's that. There's nothing to be ashamed of. These are for fun. No one's lives actually depend on them. There's no one getting hurt if you don't do them. Except maybe her ego," one of the other Sonier calls out, and there's laughter from a friend that lands beside her. There's another indicator of the next part of the scene in just a few minutes, and they all get the address. A police dispatch stating that a vehicle has had its tire shredded and gone wildly out of control. She stays behind a bit as she thinks, before sighing and deciding to fly away. Not really feeling her best today, although completely unsure as to why. Something's up, but she can't figure out what. She sends a message that she's bowing out of the rest of the little contest and will not be taking part of any more for the rest of the day. There's a brief moment where she smirks as she confirms that no, it's not something the Undaunted have done. She's just not at her best. She swoops downwards and lands at street level in a few moments. "Excuse me, miss," Pavel says as he moves around the freshly landed Sonier woman, and she outright stares at both him and Silicon as they move towards the next sniping position. "Something wrong? I bow out of the competition and I stumble on you moving? Life's funny, isn't it? Sorry, but I have to go," Pavel says before rushing away with Silicon in tow.